because he does this crazy thing where he gives us the longing and then we feel empty and then he fills it with himself.
Hmm.
And it's this paradox because who wants to lean into the longing when we've been so disappointed in community or even disappointed with him? But there's something about the longing that calls a greater capacity in us. One of my favorite verses around I offer often to single women who are longing to be married is from Eugene Peterson's translation of Romans 8, where he says, waiting, and I could also say longing, does not diminish us any more than it does a pregnant mother. It is
Hmm.
in the longing that our capacity grows, our capacity for Him, our capacity for ourselves, our broken selves, our capacity for others.
Hello, and welcome to the Simple Charity Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Grosso, the CEO of Simple Charity, a nonprofit that inspires and educates and equips Christians to love generously like Jesus. A few months ago, I went to a breakfast event for leaders in Atlanta and heard a talk on the importance of listening for leadership. The speaker was so wise and compelling that I immediately wanted to have her on our show. Judy Nelson Lewis is a writer and a spiritual director. She has a Master's of Arts in Spiritual Formation and Direction from Richmond and has graduated from Renovare's Program for Spiritual Formation, the Larry Crabb School of Spiritual Direction, and she teaches at Sustainable Faith. She has over 30 years of experience in ministry, communications, and leadership. Judy recently released a book called Exhale that I highly recommend. It features brief and rich meditations to help you on your spiritual journey to God, and you can find it on Amazon. Our conversation is wide-ranging and hits on some trends in evangelical Christianity, including the rise of spiritual formation and practice, and it also hits on a theology of suffering, on topics like how to be a good listener and how to be free from anxiety. So join me for a conversation about faith and love with a wise guide. This is your podcast. So as always, send me your thoughts, questions, and suggestions at brian@simplecharity.org. And if the show is helpful to you, please click a 5-star rating in your podcast app. This helps get the show out to more listeners. You can also hit subscribe, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Again, this little action is only taken by a fraction of our listeners, but it's super, super helpful. I'm so glad you're with us today.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I serve as a Simple Charity philanthropic advisor to individuals, couples, families, foundations, and family offices in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina, but also to clients around the country. If you're curious about your own generosity journey and would like help thinking through a philanthropic strategy with intentionality to discern where God is calling you to love people, to find excellent nonprofits to partner with, or to understand the impact of your current grant making, I would love to connect and share more about Simple Charity's philanthropic advising offerings. You can connect with me at melissahall@simplecharity.org. That's melissahall@simplecharity.org. And you can learn more about us at simplecharity.org. That's simplecharity.org.
Judy Nelson Lewis, welcome to the Simple Charity Podcast.
Thank you, Brian. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. I first heard you speak at a local gathering for business leaders in the Atlanta area called Virtue Voices, and you talked about listening as a way to grow as a leader. And Judy, honestly, I was floored by your talk, learned so much from you in that brief time. I feel like you captured the energy in the room. Everyone was totally locked into your words, and so I've just been really looking forward to this and really grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great day.
Judy, what are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for Advent. I just started my Advent reading, and I didn't really practice the Christian calendar growing up in my early faith journey, but the last few years I really have leaned into this ancient Christian calendar, this way of living the life of Jesus all year long. And so much Advent reading is for those who wait and those who
Hmm.
ache. And so, I feel right at home waiting and aching and joining, all our brothers and sisters around the world, um, for millennia who ask, "How long, O Lord,
Mm,
until you make things right, until all the sad things become untrue," as Tolkien says. So I'm grateful that in the Christian calendar, there is a practice of waiting and aching and normalizing that about our Christian experience. So that's what I'm grateful for today.
that is beautiful. And what kind of church do you go to now, Judy? Because I recently became Anglican, and
Come on.
so I feel like what you're describing feels very Anglican to me, and following the church calendar is something that's new for me as well. But what
Yeah.
kind of church are you a part of these
Yeah,
days?
so I was in, the PCA for 20 plus years when I lived in Orlando, Florida, and then when I got married and moved to Atlanta and the kids loved a big, non-denominational church, we were there for a long time, and now we're moving towards Anglicanism also. So, I do appreciate, yeah, the pattern of living a church story through Jesus's life. Yeah, I'm with you. It's been
Yeah,
really rich.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm really interested in your story, so maybe we could start our conversation there, and then
Okay.
just so that folks know where we're going, I do want to talk about listening,
Mhm.
um, and how to listen, how to be a better listener, how listening is an act of love.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we were discussing before the show was to talk about communities, social isolation, how to actually form real, deep friendships. Um, this has been coming up in my life, multiple times in the last even week or two. So
Mhm.
and I think it's something a lot of people struggle with. A lot of you know, grown-ups don't have friends. We just moved to this area a year ago, and I'm still like, how do you do this? How do you move to a new place and make friends? So that's where the
Mhm.
conversation's going. But to start with, I would love to just hear your story and
Mhm.
how did Judy Nelson Lewis become Judy Nelson Lewis?
We were chatting earlier about our holiday, and I was in Virginia, where I grew up in Virginia, the middle of 3 girls, a sports crazy fan. I got to introduce my husband to the Washington Capitals when we were home. So we had all sports tickets to all the major teams, and, that was fun. I became a Christian through the ministry of Young Life in high school. I'd been a totally spiritually interested kid, like in church with our family, taking notes as a kid for the pastor. But it wasn't until I heard the gospel through Young Life that it kind of like clicked for me. So
Mm,
became my early spiritual life, how to read the Bible, a desire
mm,
to share my faith, how to be in a Christian community, all began in Young Life and then went on to James Madison University, where I studied English and public relations, got involved in the ministry of Cru, then Campus Crusade. There, most of my Young Life friends became involved in Cru, and there I really felt equipped to share my faith, was involved in a sorority, and really um, fell in love with Jesus and really wanted him to be known. And it was also there that I
yeah,
kind of got a global picture, like, come help change the world, kind of mindset, like, Crew
that's a very
had
crew
the
mindset.
very Crew mindset, yes, a lot of energy around that with the young people, with a lot of energy who think, at that stage, you actually can do that. Now, I think maybe there's a different way to think about it, but, I was captured. I was captured by a plan to change the world. So joined staff with Crew 35 years ago, thought I'd do that for a couple
Mm,
years, and here I am all these years later. I thought I'd end up in like public relations for a sports team. So I had public relations for what God was doing around the world and ended up in communications for Crew, traveling around the world, writing about what God was doing, seeing the gospel in different contexts was so helpful to me.
mm,
Most people think that Crew is only a campus ministry, but we work in clean
gosh,
water, we
crew
work
does
with
everything.
athletes, we work with
Yeah,
families, The Jesus film. Huge, huge. Yeah. So spent 20 years at our headquarters. Got married at 43. Was a late bride. Got 4 stepkids and 3 grandkids and one and a husband all in one day. Massive transition. Moved to Atlanta 14 years ago and have stayed with Crew, but have moved more into spiritual formation, soul care work. Ended up doing a master's in spiritual formation and direction. Work primarily as a spiritual director with mostly people in ministry, mostly women leaders. Also do retreats and am working on purchasing a villa in Italy along a pilgrim path called the Via Francigena, and it will be a hospitality house for pilgrims. And I'll be providing kind of the soul rest, the spiritual rhythms of the day for volunteers and pilgrims. So, really exciting project. And yeah, that's where I find myself today.
And Judy, where did you get your master's?
Here in Atlanta at Richmont
Oh, okay.
University. Yep,
Yeah,
they're mostly known for their,
their
Christian
counseling.
counseling, yep, and
Hmm.
I did a, partnership they do with the Renovare Institute, so that was a third of my master's, and that's studying particularly the works of Dallas Willard and Richard Foster, which was
Hmm.
a huge influence in my formation training.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a counselor these days, and I think he got his degree at Richmond as well.
Oh,
He didn't.
yeah, if
Yeah,
they're in Atlanta, they might have. It's a great
yeah,
program, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh goodness, there's so many things I want to talk about now. Your project in Italy. Tell me about that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So this is a super interesting story. You might have heard the Camino de Santiago in
I
Spain,
have.
which
My
is
wife has
yeah.
done it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. She did it with a buddy of hers in college. Just the two of them. Hostel to hostel, and yeah, she has some crazy stories from it actually.
I bet she does. Well, we did the last 100 miles, but we called ourselves the posh pilgrims because we didn't go hostel to hostel. We like had people carry our bags. But it was still a great taste of what walking can do in our formation. I'm sure your wife has tons of stories. So that one's gotten tons of, I mean, it's crowded now. It's super crowded. So this pilgrimage, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but in 880, the Archbishop of Canterbury, called Sigric the Serious, made his pilgrimage from Canterbury all the way to Rome to get his blessing from the Pope. And he documented each stage of his pilgrimage. And so that
Hmm.
became a big pilgrimage in the early thousands. And then it kind of just fell off the map. And then in 1980, a travel writer got a hold of this itinerary that Sigric the Serious had written. And he thought, I bet I can find that pathway. So sure enough, he went and, the stories were held in the cities and they'd be like, oh, I think it's over there. I think it's over there. So, it's been refound, and a council of the English, the Swiss, the French, and the Italians have said, let's build this up similar to the Camino de Santiago and get some rejuvenation in these cities that are kind of dwindling. And so it's not a particularly, I mean, it started out obviously as a spiritual pilgrimage, but now people do it for all kinds of reasons. And so Crew has a house in Spain, but it's very small, and they just offer prayer for those who are coming through. I think they showed the Jesus film. This villa, it's called the Villa di Vorno. You can go to our website, Villadi, Vorno, for the city of Vorno, has 18 bedrooms and they all have their own bathrooms. It was a summer house of a wealthy family outside of Lucca, Italy, and we just secured the final funding to purchase it. It needs some infrastructure work, but not a ton, which is a miracle. And yeah, well, we start hosting pilgrims in May. And then 6 months of the year we'll be hosting pilgrims. And then the other 6 will be retreats, training, spiritual direction, sabbatical housing. It's a really it's a really cool project.
That's such a cool project.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks
That's
for asking
amazing. Well,
about
and
that.
congratulations on raising the money. It's no small feat to raise $2.4 million. Or
It's no
yeah,
small feat, and we have a
yeah.
team of, like, 3 people, so it has been a really
Wow.
fun project, but a really faith-stretching and watching God do what he does, yeah.
Yeah, if there's people who wanna kinda support the project still, has the window passed, or are there ways to
Oh,
kinda
no.
get involved or
Oh, no.
support
Yeah, the window's
financially,
wide
or
open.
if
We
you're in
need
Italy, you can stop by?
You can. In the spring, we'll be ready for you. Yeah, you could just
Okay.
go to our website, and there's a link for giving and just learning more about it, and, yeah, we need new beds, we need all the stuff
Yeah.
to have people open the door, yeah.
So I'm curious about what drew you towards this space of retreats, of spiritual direction, spiritual formation, this kind of there's a kind of movement here, I think, kind of within
Yeah,
evangelicalism.
yep.
It feels to me like the movement was birthed after kind of like scandal of after scandal
Hmm,
that was public, kind of this wave of deconstructions in the church that like
yeah,
became a term. I feel like when I was in college, it was like peak deconstruction season.
yeah, yes.
And so it feels like that's kind of brought this energy towards like, how do we be healthy Christians?
I
Um,
think yeah.
y- yeah. Do you feel like that you have a story and journey that's similar there, or yeah, like what has drawn you towards this
Mhm,
space
mhm,
of spiritual formation and um,
mhm.
this particular way of following Jesus, if I could describe it like that, or like, I don't know, kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's overlapping reasons. My poll was maybe a little earlier than some of the things you're talking about, but I think those are evidence as well. I think for me, I mean, it was desperation, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
as a writer and a language person, like, I needed more language for my journey with Christ than I was finding in my particular tradition, evangelicalism, right?
mm,
I needed more language. I needed a sturdier theology of suffering.
yeah, yeah,
I needed, accompaniment that was different than discipleship, which is very heady and often theological, which I also appreciate. But I didn't even really know that there were other streams of faith. I was just so
yeah,
deep in the evangelical stream, which has so many gifts, right? But I didn't know there was a justice stream or a contemplative stream. I was probably living more as a contemplative without having the language for it. The things I was reading, the things I was drawn to, but I was also in the seat of a very aggressive evangelistic organization. And
yeah,
I mean, obviously, I still am. Yeah. So I
yeah,
think there was some like desperation in me to find
yeah,
some language, to find a sturdier theology of suffering, to find, like these itineraries of faith that
yeah,
our church mothers and fathers have offered that I just didn't know existed. And I didn't
yeah,
realize that, okay, there's church history before the Reformation.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
lot of gifts. Yeah.
right. I think that's so good, and I think it's hard to know kind of the waters that you're in. But one of the things I think about with this stream of evangelicalism that I've also participated in, and in some ways still participate in,
Yeah.
is how kind of 20th century, 21st century American it is. Like, it is situated in a place and time.
Yes.
I feel like there is a lot from the Reformation, and you're welcome to disagree with me on any of this, Judy. But a lot from the Reformation that was actually intertwined with the Enlightenment,
Mhm.
and actually kind of reducing human beings to our thoughts and
Mhm.
our rationality, and
Mhm.
neglecting our bodies and our feelings.
Mm. Amen.
And so it
Yes.
feels like the spiritual formation movement is like, okay, what does it mean to follow Jesus with all of your strength and all of your heart, and
Yes.
not just with all of your mind?
Yes.
I don't,
Yes. How do we slip into our bodies
yeah.
and into our emotions and bless them and say, "This
Hmm.
is actually
Hmm.
good. These are more ways to be with Jesus than I knew before, more than just an intellectual assent to a set of beliefs." So I think we're speaking the same language, and it is interesting. I don't know if you know the name Phyllis Tribble.
No, I don't.
She's a church historian. She's since passed away, but she has this theory that every 500 years there's an upheaval. And so the last 500 years would have been the Reformation. Then there's, overlap by decades, but every 500 years, there's an upheaval. So you think back at the Reformation. Well, we also had the Renaissance, we had the printing press, we had disease, we had Christians can read the
Hmm.
Bible for themselves now. So this huge upheaval. Well,
Hmm.
think about the last 20, 40 years for us, right? We've got COVID, we've got empire, we've got
The internet,
deconstruction. Yeah. Yeah.
40 years
So
ago
it's
is,
real.
yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting to think. And I often wonder if our children, I don't know that I'll see the next reiteration of the church, you know, maybe, well, I don't want to make a strong statement. Some of the sturdier, long-standing churches have greater anchors with which we can find ourselves, maybe a better formed
Yeah.
individual, but it's very uncomfortable to be in this overlap of 500 years. Everything feels like it's up for grabs,
Yeah.
and, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a have you interacted with logic models?
No,
It's like
no, tell me
it's like
more.
a social science. I don't know. I was actually studied economics, but I also studied global health, which is like international public health. And people in global health love logic models, which is an approach to building programs where you have inputs and then you have outputs and then you have outcomes and then maybe
Okay.
long-term outcomes. So basically, if you want to um well, I'll just show you where I'm going with this. So, like, if you wanted to reach the world for Jesus, then you could put that in a logic model, and you could say outcomes are people coming to know Jesus, and inputs are, we need financial resources, we need a number of this many people who hear, this number of missionaries, this number of
Yep.
times the gospel, outputs are this number of times the gospel is shared, this, and then outcomes are this many people becoming followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
But the thing about, and so this is a really popular way in a lot of kind of like big secular philanthropy to think about nonprofit programs but the thing about it is it's linear. It's like a machine. Inputs lead to outputs, lead to outcomes.
Yeah.
And I just think there is a sense and to like in the church and in ministries to want to do the same thing. And then that way you can report back to your donors. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, we had this many out activities and then we had this many people come to know Jesus. And here's how much it costs for people to come to know Jesus. And and you can kind of create this like machine and like it's like but I think part of what's interesting about what you're describing of a cycle of every 500 years is like a maybe rebirth, kind of this like disruption, is
Uh-huh.
it's so out of our control.
Yes.
you know
Yes.
like I mean, I think, I have friends who are no longer walking with the Lord,
Yeah.
who at one point in their lives they were a number on a Young Life or Navigators or Crew spreadsheet where
Mhm.
they got baptized and they're
Mhm.
no longer walking with the Lord. And and I just think like by focusing so much on growth sometimes sometimes at the expense of health, like I don't know, like I just think we like are we getting that idea from somewhere that's not the Bible, that's not Christian tradition? Are we kind of just actually getting that idea from culture or from
Yeah.
the business world or from wherever? And and that might have short term gains, but maybe there are these long term costs to that. I'm not trying to be over the, I guess, critical over a moment, but I'm trying to think critically about why
Yeah.
there is so much deconstruction.
Yep.
Gen Z is kind of coming back. They're kind of swinging back towards Jesus, which is cool. Uh, but I think there is like an important thing to ask of what happened over the last 10 to 15 years that led so many young people to walk away from the church.
Yeah.
And it feels like the spiritual formation movement is in some ways a response to that.
Mhm.
Um, but if growth kind of reach changing the world, maybe we'll just pause it, isn't the main thing. like, shouldn't be the main thing. It's a part of it, but I guess I'm curious, like, what is the main thing? Like, what is the way
Mm,
to do ministry
mm.
in a healthier way? Um, yeah, that was a
Yeah,
long rant, Judy. I did not mean to go there, but I just
I
felt,
love it. I
yeah,
love it. Well, I mean, I think what is the right way to do ministry is, the question that the church has been wrestling with since the beginning. What I think um, might be a course correction. I mean, one thing that makes me really nervous is about the spiritual formation movement is that it's like the next cool hip thing
yeah,
with the next cool hip speakers and writers. And
yeah.
so I feel
John Mark
deep.
Comer railing against all the influencers and megachurch pastors. Oh, he kind of
Who's
becomes
now an
that.
influencer. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
totally, totally,
And I love it. I love the
totally.
man. So I'm not. That's not a critique, but it is.
Well, and
Yeah,
as someone who studied Dallas Willard deeply, I'm grateful that he's making it accessible to people. I think and one thing I love is that we're opening up all the ways we can be with God. It's not just a morning quiet time and a pumped up worship and, like, let's talk about the gifts that the church has given us in ways to be with God. Like, I'm deeply grateful that that's a conversation that's happening now. But there's no magic formula. So that's what we're pushing back against, the business, the culture, that there's some kind of formula that if you do A plus B, it's going to equal C. Well, God's economy does not work that way.
mm,
I think it's also a deep trust in the slow work of God, a deep work of God that's our lifetime's work, right? If we keep taking our spiritual temperature to see how fast we're growing, we're going to give up. I mean, it's just not helpful. And so, talking about those who deconstruct themselves right out of the faith, I I feel deeply compassionate for them, and I think is actually one of the reasons I became a spiritual director because I
yeah.
wanted to be the kind of person who can companion others in those spaces and save them from some heartache, give them some language, give them some affirmation that we should be deconstructing in a healthy way. Jesus is a great iconoclast. If we think about him the same way that I did 10 years ago, I'm in deep trouble, right? So, I think that can be the gift of spiritual friendship, companionship, and direction. I mean, we train to be a spiritual midwife to someone.
Hmm,
We help them recognize, oh, this is the itinerary. This is actually the normal Christian life. And you're actually right on time. I mean, those are the two things I probably say the most that bring people the greatest, maybe relief. Like, you are right on time. These are the kinds of questions you should be wrestling with. And let me give you a broader itinerary for what it looks like to walk with God for a lifetime. I
mm,
think those are two great gifts of direction.
mm,
And I need to hear him again and again with from my director.
mm. That's good. So, in your job as a spiritual director, you spend a lot of time listening to people, going deep places with them.
Mhm.
Um, how do you be good at listening?
Mm, that's a great question, and this is what we do. I train through an organization called Sustainable Faith. I did my training at Richmond University, but now I train others through an organization called Sustainable Faith. We have chapters all over the country. It's a 2-year cohort-based program, and so we spend a lot of time becoming a non-anxious presence. Like,
Hmm,
how do you still your mind, still your body, create a quiet, safe place for people? So that there's actually things you can practice to do that, and one of them is something you mentioned before, living an embodied life. Like, okay, I'm
yeah.
feeling my feet on the ground as I'm talking to you, if maybe I'm anxious to be on a podcast. I'm feeling my bottom on the chair. I'm feeling my chair hold me. I am safe. But it takes practice. A lot of silence and solitude practices help us become less distracted in our minds. It's a battle. We never not have busy thoughts, monkeys jumping around in our head. But how do we become hospitable to all of the things in order to be with someone in a way that's safe, non anxious, everything's welcome here.
Hmm.
It takes practice.
Hmm.
And curiosity without an agenda is a huge thing we teach people. Like, you get curious. Oh,
Hmm.
you went to Duke? Oh, my husband went to Carolina, and now I'm over on here. But like, oh, actually, how can I not be curious for facts, but
Yeah.
be curious for the big movements in someone's life? Yeah, it's a practice.
Hmm. I love that answer. I would characterize myself in this particular season of life as an anxious presence.
Yeah. It's well, there's a lot of outside factors that would cause us to be anxious, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
inside factors that would cause us to be anxious. I deal with anxiety myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. So maybe we can hold it here for a second, just selfishly, but also if listeners are also people who struggle with anxiety and
Mm,
how to build. And I think one thing that you said that stuck out to me was connecting with your body.
yeah.
And, you know, I think like there's so many aspects of my mood that are influenced by my body. And that's
Mhm.
sometimes, am I sleeping? How much coffee did I drink today? Alcohol affects my body and my life, and am I exercising? All of these elements and components, and um, so that stood out to me. But any other thoughts on kind of how to, I guess, be this non anxious presence? Because I do think it's connected.
Yeah.
This podcast is about learning to love generously like Jesus,
Mhm.
and it feels connected to be a non anxious presence and offer that as a gift to the people around you is actually this act of love. Like if I can get myself there when I walk in home at the end of the day and say hi to my wife and hang out with my kids, I'm loving them better.
Yeah, you are. You really are. I think we underestimate that, in the hustle bustle. But I'm reminded of someone asked Dallas Willard, "How would you best describe Jesus?" Do you know this? And he said, "Relaxed." I mean, all of you
Yeah.
could have done all the omnis, right? Omnipresent, he's relaxed. I mean, I kind of scratch my head, but I also kind of go, yeah, talk about non-anxious presence. So, okay, that's an intention, right? I want to be like Jesus, who was relaxed. What does that ask of me? And I think one of the big practices is something I talked about in that talk was the power of the pause,
Hmm.
right? That we, as Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response, we actually have a choice. And that in that choice is the pause. And in that place, I mean, it is the pause, and in the pause is the choice.
Hmm.
Right? And so when you're coming home from work and you want to be a non-anxious presence with your family, it's like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna pause over every threshold I can." When I get into the car, I'm now driving home, I'm actually gonna turn the radio off. I'm gonna practice a little bit of silence. I'm gonna notice the anxiety in my body. So much of the anxiety is just naming it. "Oh, I feel a tightness in my chest. Oh, my gut's kinda upset or my head's spinning. Okay, I'm gonna just maybe breathe for a while in the car. I'm gonna turn off the music." So with every threshold, could there be a pause? I'm going from one meeting to a meeting, another meeting. I'm actually gonna build in like 10 minutes between the meetings. And I'm gonna walk my dog. Walking my dog is a spiritual practice for me. I'm
Hmm.
gonna be outside. I'm gonna maybe take in some beauty. I'm gonna feel the wind on my face. I might feel the sunshine on my face. I'm gonna move my body, right?
Yeah.
I might see a neighbor for a second. Um, so, like, over every threshold transition, could
Yeah.
there be a built-in pause to just reconnect? Even if you're just naming your anxiety, there's something to that.
Hmm.
That's a simple thing any of us can do, and it's free. Takes time, not free for time, but 10 minutes in each movement from thing to thing.
I love it. I love it. Um, Judy, sometimes I feel like these podcast episodes, I just sit with a wise person and siphon off all the wisdom as much as I can for this 20 something that I am.
Oh,
And it's like my own form of therapy, which is really good. So,
I love it. I love it.
um one thing as I hear you speak and quote Dallas Willard, and you definitely come across me as this non-anxious presence, and you've been
Hmm.
shaped by the sustainable faith movement, Renovare, and all these groups. I'm curious about if there are tensions with the kind of evangelicalism that you and I have also experienced, or if there are complementarities, and actually these are um really like the approach of kind of typical evangelicalism, especially kind of the I don't know. I feel like I don't. I wish I had enough language for the different streams of Christian traditions, but this kind of approach of you know really evangelistic, like we want to reach the lost, we want to get people into the kingdom, we want to get them discipled, and meeting weekly in discipleship groups, and it's this kind of system of developing
Hmm.
formation. Um, is that a tension, you think, with spiritual formation or spiritual direction, or is it just incomplete?
Great question. I mean, I do think it's incomplete. I think what Cru and these parachurch and megachurch organizations do well is, if you're familiar with this critical journey, who kind of, yeah, who, or Teresa of Avila. I mean, like I talk about these spiritual itineraries, right? That
Mm,
give us a broader scope. They're not bad. They're just insufficient for the whole Christian life. And
yeah.
so I think some of the mega churches, some of the parachurch organizations, I mean, they were built out of a time in the 1950s where it was like, people didn't know how to articulate the gospel in a way that was meaningful. Now, bringing them to a decision, okay, yeah, that can be a part of the process for sure. But that's what it was. Those were born out of those times, and a fear, right, that Russia was going to blow us up. So we really felt a sense of like, we better hurry up and do this. So let's consider the context in which those evangelicalism was blowing up and go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I can understand the urgency. But now we've got more context and we can think, okay, those are stage 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1, oh, God is interested in me. Oh, I could know God. Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Young Life, for giving me a way of understanding a simple but helpful gospel for that stage in my life, right? Stage 2, we find people and books and organizations to follow, and we find belonging. Oh my gosh, how significant was that in my teens and 20s? I have a place to belong. I have like-minded people. Okay, great. Need that. Stage 3, oh, I'm the leader now. I got to find people to come in. I got to hustle. I got my gifts. I'm going to make those things happen. Well, the problem is when we get stuck in stage 3, because
Mm,
now we got to keep the lights on. We got to get more people to keep going. I'm now working out of my gifts until I'm completely exhausted.
yeah.
Doesn't really seem like the world is changing. And I'm starting to get a little bit disillusioned. The ways I've been being with God don't really seem to be working anymore. I'm looking
Yeah.
around and everyone else is still hustling. And I'm starting to think, what's wrong with me? Well, this is actually the normal Christian life. And
Hmm.
this is where people start to deconstruct. It's like, okay, well, there's something called the dark night of the soul, the dark night of the senses, what some people call the wall. Okay, this is also the normal Christian life. But to the stage tours, it looks like they're abandoning their faith. Well, actually, they just have bigger, better questions. And it's also the place, the wall, where so much of our idols become detached from us. But it's deeply uncomfortable. If you don't have a guide, books were my guide. I didn't have someone then, but I had some books and some people that kept me in the conversation. Some wise mentors that normalized things for me. So I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just
Yeah.
go, yeah, I'm going to go, okay, yeah, it has its place, but you can't get stuck. It's when you get stuck in any of those stages, which overlap, and we also have access to all the stages again,
Hmm.
and our journey is not linear. It's circular and upward towards union. I mean, there's this
Yeah.
magnet of love that's just pulling us, right? But it's a mystery too.
Yeah.
It's a mystery. That's a lot of words I just said right there.
Oh, that was wonderful. What you talked about theology of suffering, and I think in that kind of stage 3 that you're describing, one of the
Mhm.
things that you may encounter, people may encounter, is suffering,
Yep.
and then actually not having those theological tools to
Yep.
talk about. I had a you know one of the hardest things I've gone through is my best friend left the faith, so I was part of what I was
R
motivating what I was talking about earlier, but something like apostasy. You know,
Yep.
it just didn't fit in my theology at all.
Right.
You know, um, death for a lot of folks. You know, you kind of hit these things in life that are
Mhm.
inevitable,
Mhm.
and if we don't have this kind of thicker theology in practice, then we can't weather those storms. But what role does, I guess, suffering play in those phases?
Mhm.
And what did you mean when you talked about needing a theology of suffering?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question because it is once we've been the good Christian up to the stage 3, like A plus B equals C in God's economy to that point. If I do this,
Right.
then this will happen, and then I can manage God, and it's all looking good. And we'd love to put out that picture. And yet, it is suffering, it is unmet questions, it is a delve into mystery that moves us along. Um, A plus B equals C in God's economy is completely now blown up. We can't manage God or others, and it's it'll rock your world. For me, it was the long waiting to be married. I wanted to be married since I was 20. I got married at 43. So 23 years of longing, hoping, wondering, blowing up. I'm the good Christian. Why isn't anyone picking me? What's wrong with me? This move towards finding my deep belovedness in God took 20 years. And I'm glad it came before I got married. There was some freedom there, but there was the loss of I'm never gonna have children of my own. I'm past that age. So for me, it was that particular long waiting, maybe why I love Advent so much, because there's just a lot of room for waiting and what good things can be born from waiting. But that's also a normal part of the Christian life is losing the formulas, finding God to be unmanageable, um, having to delve into a little bit of mystery, a lot of mystery, um, losing some belonging, right? Because
Mm,
I don't wanna have those kind of conversations anymore. I don't wanna do that kind of ministry anymore.
mm.
Feeling deeply misunderstood by others, like, "Wow, you used to be like the backbone of the church, and now what's happening to you?" Well, actually, "Oh, are you becoming a progressive Christian?" I've heard that before, and it's like, "Well, actually, I think I'm becoming a more ancient Christian, if I'm really
More
honest."
conservative.
Yeah, it's like,
you know?
I'm kinda going in yeah. So, I hope that answers your question about suffering, that, it untethers us to so much.
Yeah. 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 I think that's really good. I I think one of the things that I see in scripture, it in regards to suffering, is that the Bible actually teaches that we will suffer. That
Yeah.
everyone will suffer. And um and I think one thing that's interesting about the experience of suffering in my life is that it's always a surprise. And
Mhm.
and I think that makes sense. Like, in some ways, it's not how God designed the world. Like, it is
Right.
a disconnect from God's original good intent. Um, but it's sometimes helpful, I guess, to even someone who's listening to this. There's something in your life, I think sometimes it's helpful to be like, this is not catching God off guard. And this does
Yeah.
not mean we are uniquely broken and, compared to everyone else who's also, kind of broken. Like, we live in a broken world. But it is comforting to know that this is a natural, in some ways, part of the journey. And then
Mhm.
there's tools for it. And one of those tools I think is community and friendship.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think it was John Mark Comer who I heard say, we are, and he was quoting someone else. I can't remember. You might know the original. We are hurt most deeply in community, and we are healed most deeply in community. And one of the challenging things about suffering, I think, is that it makes us feel kind of different and then close in on ourselves.
Yes.
And when actually the only way to heal involves opening up again within the context of other human beings.
Yeah.
Um, but we live in such an isolating world, you know? And so I think one of the sad things about that is like, I just feel like probably there's more and more people who just carry stuff by themselves in our
Yeah.
world, you know? Um, but how do we form community that's healing?
Mm.
I think spiritual direction is an answer to that. Um, but I'm curious also about like, you know, friendships. Like how do we um take off masks and our
Mhm.
family even and the relationships
Mhm.
we already have that are kind of, we're bringing kind of this false self to others.
Mhm.
So give me some wisdom there, Judy. How do I make friends in a
Oh
new
my gosh,
city?
that's
And
yeah, it's such a big question, and for one, I just have deep compassion. You have a 5, a 3, and a one-year-old, and you just moved to a new city,
yeah.
and you founded a not-for-profit. So, for one, I just am moved by compassion for what that requires of a person, right? To be a good husband, to be a good father, to be a good leader just requires a lot of energy. And so there's a part of me that just feels deep compassion for what it requires to do that well. And then to be like, yeah, and I also want to be a robust follower of Jesus. And that takes a lot of time. So I guess my first particular response to you is one of deep compassion and to give yourself deep compassion. And then what I hear in you is a longing. Like, I want to be seen and known, and to tend to that longing, to say yes to that longing. Because when we've been hurt in community, right, the last thing we want to do is be brave and show up as our true selves to new people and ask them to love us. And could we love you? And so, whew, that just takes time, just takes a lot of time and intention, right? And so I say, pay attention to the longing. Allow that, as one of my favorite writers, Trevor Hudson, says, to be the bus ticket home to the heart of God, to even allow the longing to take you back to Him. Because He does this crazy thing where He gives us the longing and then we feel empty and then He fills it with Himself.
Hmm.
And it's this paradox because who wants to lean into the longing when we've been so disappointed in community or even disappointed with Him? But there's something about the longing that calls a greater capacity in us. One of my favorite verses around I offer often to single women who are longing to be married is from Eugene Peterson's translation of Romans 8, where he says, waiting, and I could also say longing, does not diminish us any more than it does a pregnant mother. It is
Hmm.
in the longing that our capacity grows, our capacity for Him, our capacity for ourselves, our broken selves, our capacity for others. So waiting does not diminish us any more than it does a pregnant mother. We are enlarged in the waiting, it says. We are enlarged in the longing. And then my favorite part goes on to say, when we become weary in the waiting or the longing, the Spirit is right alongside us, making prayers out of our aching groans and wordless sighs. That even when we are beyond our capacity to be enlarged by longing for community or a spouse or a child, the Spirit is right alongside us, making prayers out of our aching groans and wordless sighs, and allow that to have its way in your life, and try as best as you can to be patient, because it's in that enlarging that's gonna allow you to be in community as a non-anxious presence, right? It's in that enlarging and the prayers of the Spirit on our behalf that's gonna allow us to be the kind of people that are good friends, that are good husbands, that are good dads. And so to lean into that even when it's uncomfortable, I think it's just over time bear beautiful fruit in your life.
Hmm. That was a good word, Judy. This
Oh.
podcast is turning into a spiritual direction session.
But a mutual one,
Mm,
which they always are. They're always mutual, because my heart is also lightened by hearing what you're wrestling with as a 20-something. It's
yeah,
really encouraging to me.
yeah. Yeah, I have this impulse in me, and I think it's the entrepreneurial impulse of like, how do we fix it? Let's fix it now.
Yeah, of course.
And um, and so part of me is like, we just need more. We need more. I need a book club. I need to join a soccer team. Like I need to, have a strategy for fixing this problem. But I think one of the things I haven't wrestled with enough that I'm hearing you saying is what do I do with the right now before the
Mhm,
problem is fixed?
mhm,
Like best case scenario, it takes a couple years. I mean, really best case scenario to have kind of a deep kind of community. And we're moving again. We're going from Alpharetta to Cumming. So it's not a big move, but it's a little bit disruptive. It's like, now all my
Yeah.
friends, all the people I met in Roswell, it's like, okay, you might as well be in Alaska at this point, honestly. It's like, we have to brave Highway 400 to hang out.
Yep.
But, uh, you know, I think I have this tendency, and I assume I'm not alone in this, of really thinking I'm going to be happy after that milestone.
Mhm.
Like everything, all will be well once I have this kind of friend group that I have envisioned, or once, we have this kind of level of financial security in our organization and our personal lives and, and everything is well because, it's perfect. But, um, that approach to life, you could do that for forever.
Yep. That's a good that's so good to know at your stage, because all of those things are just, like, right out there, right? It's the
Yeah.
house and the location and the church and the kids' friends and the sports. I mean, it's just that it's just right a part of your world, and so the temptation is overwhelming. And so what would it be like to just even be hospitable to that?
Yeah.
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 It's okay.
And I do think that way of going through life can lead to this kind of bitterness towards God, you know? And yeah, because you feel like, like I thought we had like a contract or something. And
Yeah. I'm doing my part in the contract, and I don't
yes.
really see you doing things. But I'm really, and maybe this kind of ties back to your work with people in poverty, because any of us who have done a small mission trip to people who are less fortunate, you've seen the gift of living in the presence that they offer to us. You've seen the gift where
That's
those
right.
next things are never attainable. And so there is a present living that's so beautiful and rich and unhurried about the way that life is when you have less choices. And not to minimize the suffering for poverty, but to just kind of circle back and go, yeah, what gifts do they have to bring to me in this community, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we talk about solidarity with the poor as a Christian virtue and make the case biblically and from Christian traditions that, this is a part of what it means to follow Jesus is, and we talk about solidarity with the poor is learning from the poor by seeing their abundance. That's the first thing. The second is standing with the poor by fighting for justice, and the third is sacrificing for them by giving generously. And so there's this
Mm,
mutuality in that language, hopefully, but that idea of learning from, I think more and more as I do this work of philanthropic advising, of helping mostly wealthy people give wealth, um, I, you kind of get into these conversations and realize that wealth, first of all, doesn't solve every problem, which should go without saying. But oh gosh, I read a study the other day that's like some crazy percent of Gen Z says money could buy happiness.
yeah.
It was like, guys,
You're in for a rude awakening.
you're in for a rude awakening. Yeah, it just doesn't. And but anyways, but I think like helping, and I don't know if really even do this well yet, but I want to help our clients see their own poverty
Yeah.
and also learn from people who are in material poverty, of it's exactly what you're saying. I mean, we are addicted to dopamine, and literally in our bodies, which is put in us by this system of kind of climbing ladders and achievement
Yep.
and consumerism and buying stuff and all
Yep.
this. And it's just not satisfying. It's
Yeah.
just not the good life. And um yeah. So that's, I think, a good word for Christian philanthropists of, because giving is not about money. Giving is about love. Biblically speaking, giving is about, Paul says, if I give all that I have to the poor and do not have love, I gain nothing. And
Mhm.
so this giving is a part of our spiritual discipleship, I think, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
And so it's incomplete again, and so how do we, learn to be healthy and whole people? Um, that's going to make, I think, for better philanthropists, but also for philanthropists who are um, cheerful givers, who aren't
Yeah.
just writing checks. They're happy to be able to love their neighbors.
But I think what you hit on is so significant and also a shift in our history of giving and a shift in our uh, wanting to be heroes is this idea of mutuality. This mutuality. And I think one of the big shifts for me, um, because before I might think in generosity, like, well, God so loved that he gave. Okay, well, that's enough reason for me to give. And then there's some Old Testament teaching about some percentages, and then and like I'm just going to feel better about myself, and if I meet that percentage. And but I mean, mutuality costs a lot more than writing a check, and and in the same way, it's that much richer. And I think one of the big shifts for me was actually my study of the Trinity.
Hmm.
Because the Trinity, and I'm not talking about roles within the Trinity, I'm talking about the community, the mutuality of the Trinity.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the words the church mothers and fathers used for the Trinity was interpenetration, which
Hmm.
is a very sexy word, right? But it means that you can give and take freely. There's no demand, there's no withdrawal. And so that's a mutual community, a community of belonging, abundance, creativity. I mean, I used to just think that sin was the center of the story, right? And over
Hmm.
time, I began to realize actually the center of the story is a community of mutuality, a community of love, abundance, creativity, freedom, interpenetration. They use this word perichoresis. Para meaning perimeter, and choresis like a choreography. The only way they knew how to describe the Trinity was dancing about,
Hmm.
dancing in a circle. And so I just love that you focus on mutuality because that's where the gift is. It's not in hierarchy, who's up, who's down, who's giving, who's not. It's in this circle of belonging and mutuality and interpenetration where the joy is found.
Yeah.
Right? It's the center of the
It's good.
story, of the whole Christian story.
Hmm.
It wasn't like, they were wringing their hands going, "Well, Jesus, you better go because we're in trouble now. Our children have really screwed this up." They're like, "Oh, actually, the lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. This is
Mm,
not plan B. This is
mm,
always the plan. This is how we're gonna show what cruciform love looks like. So this is not we're not afraid here. We're not scared of your sin. We're not even" okay, this might get "we're not even separated from you because of your sin. We're always coming at you," you know?
mm,
So anyway, that
mm.
shift. So I thank you for saying mutuality about giving because that's
Yeah,
the center of belonging. The center of the story is this love affair in the Trinity.
yeah, 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 yeah. There's this, I guess, like you know, picture of like what if generosity was about kind of even reconciliation and being like healing for rich and poor,
Yes.
and but also h- like rich and poor becoming part of the same family, and
Yeah.
and I think there is a sense in which th- that's um that's the biblical paradigm of this leveling of the playing field of where we're all you know human beings made in the image of God,
Yeah.
and we're made for communion together. Judy, this has been such a rich conversation. I knew it would be, and you did not disappoint. I'm grateful for your dog and his presence
And
in our
Amazon being
show,
dropped off, I'm
and
sure.
Amazon. We're grateful for Amazon. Um, and I'm just grateful for your work and for
Mm.
you, challenging us to not abandon what for those of our listeners or for myself who have experienced kind of this kind of evangelical journey of evangelical Christianity, grew up in that, found some things that were not complete, maybe, to not
Mhm.
abandon the church, to not
Yeah.
abandon the movement or the body or people who are seeking to introduce people to Jesus Christ and have a relationship with him, but instead to widen our aperture and learn from more of Christian history, learn
Yeah.
from the parts of the Bible that we've been ignoring. It's all in
Yeah.
there. The laments are in there.
Yep.
And to actually go deeper. And I feel like you and your ministry are leading people deeper.
Mm.
Um, and that's beautiful. I'm very grateful for you and for your ministry. And
Mm.
as we're closing up, what is one thing that you're learning in this season of life about what it means to love like Jesus?
Mm. I think maybe circling back and maybe why it was so present to me, in our conversation was this idea of being caught up in this community of belonging, which is the Trinity, because there's no, formula for that. There is a surrender to love, to loving all of the parts of me and welcoming all of who I am into the presence of God, to allow the broken parts to be loved and seen within this community of love, which is the Trinity, to find that belonging. There is my home state, and it's there that I don't have to defend or perform or try harder or get it right, but just to be loved within that community, I think is becoming the most freeing part of my journey with Christ. I'm watching the fruits of the Spirit grow without deep intention. It's it's really encouraging. So I say this to those who are moving into the later stages of life that there comes freedom. There comes greater fruit. Um, and it doesn't really have to do much with trying. So countercultural, but allowing myself to be seen and loved and belong in that community. That's my family of origin. The Trinity is my family of origin, and that's where I belong. So maybe practicing slipping into that space more often.
The invitation to grow this week is to pray. That's it. And as you pray, focus less on the words that you have for God and consider sitting in silence and contemplating the love of God for you right now, right as you are. Thank you so much to Judy Nelson Lewis for joining me on the show. As a reminder, her new book is called Exhale, and you can find it on Amazon. If you have feedback on this episode, you can reach me at brian@simplecharity.org. Next time, a conversation about nonprofit finance with the founder of Infinite Giving and the author of the new book, Funding Your Mission. I hope you join me as we continue to learn to love generously like Jesus. Have a great week. See you next time.